Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Stacy, and today our first couple of stories have to do with technology, and technology being a little creepy, as it feels like almost every time we talk about technology, it is. So the first story has to do with DEF CON, and this is not like, a military status or anything. DEF CON is one of the world's largest hacking conferences, and is evidently aimed for children because the story at least involved hackers that range in ages from 5 to 17, which in my mind just kind of even makes the story even more like, oh my gosh, are you sure you don't want me to freak out? Because I feel very much on the verge of freaking out right now. So one of the things they had at DEF CON was this thing called the Voting Machine Hacking Village, which is where the conference attendants were challenged to try and hack into voting websites. And actually more than 30 of them were able to hack into them. And these were not real voting websites. These were replicate voting websites, but it's still a little creepy. The quickest hack happened in under 10 minutes by an 11-year-old, which fine, I'm on the verge of like not being super old when it comes to, oh my gosh, technology freaks me out. But on the other hand, not being like completely with it and, knowing how to do every technological thing. But under 10 minutes by an 11-year-old can hack a voting website is a little terrifying. And this village, I guess, shows that essentially to hack into these websites requires almost essentially no tools and can take under 2 minutes. And I'm just like, yeah, given everything that's going on politically about the most recent presidential election and whether or not that was hacked, that's a little terrifying that children could easily hack this with pretty much no tools. But the National Association of Secretaries of State, or NASS, N-A-S-S, did actually make a point to release a statement about this. And at first when I saw they released a statement, I thought it would have been like, DEF CON, what the heck are you doing teaching children how to hack into voting websites? That's a terrible thing for you to teach our children. You're just putting these ideas into their minds if they weren't already there. It's, irresponsible. They did sort of go along the idea of it's irresponsible, but not for the reasons you might think. Because the statement essentially said that the way this hacking village was set up at DEF CON is outdated and unrealistic. And I'm like, is that a bad thing? You want them to have up-to-date, realistic hacking things that children can then hack into? Your thought process is a little strange for me. Like, this statement felt a bit more, not so much towards DEF CON as towards like the general public of, hey, I know it's really frightening that an 11-year-old can hack a voting website in a very quick amount of time, but don't worry. The websites that they were trying this on, they're outdated, they're not realistic. And then the statement goes on to say, even if someone were to be able to hack those sites, it would only change the preliminary unofficial results and not the actual results themselves. These are not the websites people themselves are voting on. It's just websites sort of showing the results as they're counted down. And I'm like, that's still not exactly reassuring because, things don't have to be true for people to panic about it. And when people panic about it, that's a whole nother situation. This statement feels a little just strange or self-undercutting or something. Just like, I get you're probably trying to calm the public down, but I'm even just more freaked out about the fact that it's like, oh, hey, even if someone were to hack into this, it doesn't change the actual results, just the ones you can see and think are real. Awesome. Thanks. But continuing with the technology is creepy and we're all going to freak out about it, it has actually also come out that some Google apps actually continue to track users' location data, even if the user turns the location service off, which I kind of already figured it out for Google. Just in general, I don't generally like apps that track my location and try not to use them. So like, I don't even think I have the Maps app on my the Maps app on my phone anymore. But then I will use some things like MoviePass requires you to let your location in because it has to see if you're within a certain amount. And I'm like, does it really? Can I just not or something? Like, do you have to know where I am? But the fact that there's an ability for my phone to know where I am at any time, I just kind of always assumed if someone isn't seeing that constantly, they can easily see it, and there's some sort of record of it shown just in any time. It's the way you see in police movies or TV shows where, they answer the phone and then we can track the phone even if they don't have the phone on. I mean, it used to be you couldn't track it when the phone wasn't on, and now I'm not even sure that's the case anymore. I think they can just track me whenever. I just sort of assumed that was the case. But there was supposed to be this thing where users could pause their location history, and there was language in the sort of, I don't know if it was the user's agreement thing or whatever, that said, once location history is paused, Google Apps will not continue to track you. But that's evidently not the case. And there are some Google apps that automatically store time-stamped location data without asking. I'm not sure why. What do you need my time-stamped location data for? I get all the things of if I'm currently using the app, like if I was using, GPS or whatever, then yes, obviously, you knowing my location at that exact moment makes perfect sense. But why you need to know where I was yesterday at 3:20 p.m. when I wasn't using my phone at all? I'm just like, but why? And obviously people were understandably, if not freaked out about this, upset about this, mostly because, they had been told that's not actually the case. If you pause your location history, these apps will stop tracking you. That's the whole point of pausing location history. And now it's come to find out, oh, actually, even without asking, some apps will continue to track that data. You thought you were paused, but you're actually not. We don't care about the pause. We'll do whatever we want. Just like, yeah, no. So people were understandably, upset about this. This is sort of the language that Google had about this originally is a bit strange and vague and legalese. And so it's like, it seems like it's saying one thing, but then it's possibly saying another. So it's not clear that, technically how much they were lying or not. But this will probably be something that Google will need to address in the near future, or it'll just continue to be a thing where people are like, yeah, everything's tracking you. There is no escaping from the internet. Joy. So we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. As you've probably heard by now, unfortunately, Aretha Franklin has died. She was 76 years old as she died at her home in Detroit, and she had evidently been struggling with health problems for the last few years, and she was very, very ill right before she died. This wasn't a shock, I don't think, though that doesn't mean it wasn't upsetting. People could see that she was ill and they weren't sure she would make it through this time. I know Jay-Z and Beyonce, they had a concert in Detroit shortly before this happened, and they dedicated that concert to her. But like I said, this did not stop people from being very much upset when she did die. I myself was also upset. I quite like Aretha Franklin, even though I only knew a few of her songs. Though, of course, one of my favorites was Respect. I remember, I have no idea where she got this, but my mother had a CD. It was a compilation from Old Navy. It was Old Navy Soul. I do not know why they released that, but it had a number of songs on it. But number 7 was Aretha Franklin's Respect. And we used to play that CD every, I believe it was Sunday, either Saturday or Sunday when we cleaned the house. That was our sort of cleaning the house day. We put the CD player in the kitchen because that was sort of center of the house where we could all hear it from wherever we were. And we would just sort of put it on shuffle and let it play through. And we'd, sing and dance along to a number of the songs. And there were things like Soul Man and Rescue Me. But when Respect came on, we often would just stop whatever we were doing and get to the kitchen and just sing and dance, because that was just an amazing song. And that was the song that Aretha Franklin won her first Grammy for in 1967, which is quite amazing because if you did not know, that song was actually originally by Otis Redding, about a man wanting respect from a girl, and then she recorded it about a girl wanting respect from a man, and it became this sort of anthem almost of women like, yes, you better treat me right, as, we were getting into the second feminist movement. She ended up actually winning a total of 18 Grammys, which I'm just like, whoa, what? She won 18 Grammys. She won a Grammy Legends Award in 1991. She won a Lifetime Achievement Award in 1994. She was the first woman to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I can totally, absolutely believe. She was also the youngest recipient of a Kennedy Center honor. She recorded a gospel album when she was just 14 years old. Like, this woman had an incredible life and incredible talent. There was a number of songs that people threw out when they were talking about her after she died. Respect obviously being one of them, but then also Natural Woman came up a number of times, including she performed it at the Kennedy Center, not for her honor, but for the honor for the woman who wrote it, and evidently actually made President Obama cry at the time with that performance. In 2014, she became the first woman to have 100 hits on the Billboard's Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart with her cover of Rolling in the Deep, the Aretha version. And I'm just like, I knew you for Respect, and I totally knew you for Blues Brothers, which is just, in that she's not singing Respect. She doesn't sing Respect till Blues Brothers 2000, but that film's not as good. But she sings Think, and I'm just like, you know what? We just saw Mac Guitar Murphy just died a little while ago, and now Aretha Franklin. Like, my Blues Brothers heart is just almost crying just for that scene. I'm just like, but you and this whole moment of awesomeness that was, art imitating life, and she was clearly, it seemed at times, bigger than life. She was a queen of soul. She actually did evidently used to sign things under her signature. It said Queen Mother of Soul. And I'm just like, you know what? I feel you've actually kind of earned the right to use that moniker, so go ahead. She was also, very much involved in the civil rights movement. She offered to post bond for Angela Davis when Angela Davis was in jail. She sang Precious Lord at Martin Luther King Jr.'s memorial service. Her father was also a reverend, so there was that connection. She sang My Country 'Tis of Thee at President Obama's inauguration. Just clearly did a lot throughout her life. I know that the Obama inauguration is one of the clips I saw so many times after the news came out that she had passed. with her in that gray outfit with the hat, and it just represented so much for the time. And I think, like Respect, that's why it became such a big thing, is it was representing a lot for a lot of people and their feelings at that time of how they were feeling about life, but also what they thought was possible in life and what they thought could be possible going forward into the future. There was a clip I saw on one of the sort of main news sites when this came out where she was talking about, you know, all the things she had done in her life and what she was proud of, and what she was most proud of was being a good mother. And I'm like, on the one hand, I kind of figured you had kids, but on the other hand, that was totally not what I thought of you for at all. So it's just like, oh, totally didn't know that. But yes, also very much good for you. Along with President Obama's inauguration, she also sang for Presidents Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton at their inaugurations as well. And I'm just like, I don't know. I can't think of, at least off the top of my head, anybody else who's like, yeah, I've sang for multiple presidential inaugurations. Just like, yeah, absolutely. She just was amazing, and people were so very much upset. And when you think about it, she wasn't that old. Like 76 is not nothing to sneeze at, but it's not that old either. She had been dealing with health issues for a number of years. As you watch the clips for the different, you know, sort of videos and remembering her, watching her physically change in the last 10 to 20 years or so is quite shocking. She looks the same for quite a bit when she's younger. And then there's a period in the middle in which she looks very much the same. And then in these last few years, as you know, she was dealing with the health problems. I won't say she wasted away. That's not what happened, but you can definitely see, you know, not being able to be the full, physical, vibrant Aretha Franklin that people loved. But she was at home. She was with her loved ones. This was not a surprise, per se. There was so much love pouring out over social media. People talking, giving their, you know, best wishes to her family and friends, talking about moments where they saw her, or talking about songs of hers that really touched their lives. Respect came out so much. But considering the fact that, you know, she'd been singing since a child, that she recorded her first gospel album in 14 and lived a full life, she evidently, you know, had a not very happy marriage when she was younger, had children when she was quite young, just like did a whole lot in a full amount of life, so that like those 76 years actually seem much longer with the amount of things she was able to get done. It's hard to imagine with so many of the first she did. First woman in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, first woman to have 100 hits on that Billboard chart. It was hard to imagine, even without knowing those records, another one like Aretha Franklin. But now, knowing that she was the first in so many ways, of course, there will never be another Aretha Franklin. So, we're going to take another short break. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. To continue with Aretha Franklin, but to sort of switch things just a bit, because she was such a musical great, people have now started thinking about her memorial service and what will happen at hers and who will be there and who will perform, as tends to happen with, very famous musical stars like Michael Jackson had a lot of people performing at his, etc. So someone threw out the suggestion that one of the performers at her memorial service should be Tevin Campbell. And someone else responded to this like, essentially this was scraping the bottom of the barrel with Tevin Campbell. Who even knows who Tevin Campbell is, etc. And Tevin Campbell fans were not having it and came out in full support of like, you know what? I will stand for Tevin Campbell. You cannot talk bad about Tevin Campbell. That will not be allowed to happen. So one of these who came out in support of him was actually Missy Elliott, which is amazing to me. Missy said that Tevin had bops back before y'all was saying is a bop. And I know he was popular in the 90s, but as I am a child of the 90s, I was too young at the time to really know who he was. So I only came upon him later, and he didn't maintain his career in the same way, I don't think, as he did in the early 90s when he was very popular. But I do remember my grandmother had a CD of his. I don't even remember what it was called. I don't remember any of the songs on it other than Little Brother, which I think is probably not helping. He, I think, evidently did start really young. There was actually a picture posted of him where he talked about actually meeting Aretha Franklin herself and how he met her several times. And each time the first thing she would say to him is, "How is your mom?" And then you see in this picture, he just looks like such a young kid, and he's clearly so excited to meet her. And it's just like, wow, you must have been really young. I have no idea how old you were when you started, but you must have been so young just looking at that picture. Other people, coming out in support of Tevin Campbell of like, how dare you, say Tevin Campbell is not worthy. Someone responded, people who don't think Tevin Campbell, I'm not sure if it was should perform at Aretha Franklin's memorial or just, is not worthy to be considered for this, or like, are either A, young and don't know who the F Tevin Campbell is, or B, don't know who the F Tevin Campbell is. And I'm like, A, for me it's A. I will totally take the excuse of too young. Don't hurt me. Because I remember more so than anything else, I knew my grandmother had that CD. I'd listened to it a couple of times, even though I only remember Little Brother from it. But my being shocked when I got a little older and learning that Tevin Campbell was the voice for the singer in the Goofy movie. And if you don't know, because you're too young, the Goofy movie, this came out in the mid-90s. It's Goofy and his son Max, which I'm not even sure if that was like canon before that point, go on a road trip. Max actually wants to go to this concert that he and the girl he likes is going to, and it seems everyone else is going to or is going to be watching, but instead he has to go on this really dorky trip with his dad, who is Goofy, so of course it's really dorky. And at the time, I just didn't think too much about it because there were a number of lines in that movie. We had that on video. I watched it a number of times. But then later, when I grew up and actually started paying attention to, credits and learning who some of the vocal people were and seeing the name Tevin Campbell, and I'm like, oh, wait, I know that. Oh, wait, who's that? I totally know that. Let me think of who that was again. And then seeing that is actually... the same thing. I was like, I get that. I totally get why at that time you would have had him for that role. That part, and I'm so upset right now that I cannot remember what that character's role was, but I can totally see it in my head of Max lip syncing to one of his songs to try and impress the girl. And on the one hand, I would have been embarrassed if you did that for me in front of the school, but if it was just you, I'm actually impressed by that. And then going to the concert and seeing him live, that was actually a cool song. That was a fun part of the movie for me. He's considered, I saw someone, coming out in support saying he had 5 octave range, which I'm like, wow, because, not even a lot of female singers can have that. People were definitely not going to allow people to, bad talk Tevin Campbell. And whether or not Tevin Campbell performs at Aretha Franklin's memorial, I think it was not vindicating, but I think it was definitely good for him to see, oh, hey, no, I do actually have a lot of support, particularly on Twitter, where people will not let you bad talk anything they feel strongly about, that people still do absolutely think, not only am I a talented singer, but a talented songwriter. I'm clearly still considered, even if I haven't had the career in the past few years as I used to, still considered to be quite, a good musician. So it was nice to see that. It was sad, though, again, to think about the fact that this is because Aretha Franklin has died. It will be interesting to see who does perform at her memorial, how that's set up, what will be shown, because of course there probably will be some video clips for, different performances, different things, montages perhaps, who will speak, etc. Considering, again, she sang at Martin Luther King Jr.'s memorial, it's just like the bar feels very high, and this was the Queen of Soul, so you can't mess that up. So hopefully that will all go really well. But we're going to end for today. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.